sort of go hand in hand. The first question is, how much influence should a backstory have on a game in question? And kind of comboing off of that, how much work, if any, should a GM do to implement that story into the game? And by that I mean, if someone's backstory is just wildly out of place for the game in question, right? If you're playing a game in feudal Japan, like during the Meiji Revolution, where there's, where the samurai is sort of becoming extinct and you're seeing a lot more industrialization, and then you have, yes, my Egyptian pharaoh king, like, how much work should you do to try to fit that in? But let's go with the first one first, right? Like, how much influence do you think that any one given game should have, or one given backstory should have on a game, if any?
All right. Are you ready? Are you ready for the Omega answer? I don't know if you're ready for this.
Sure.
It depends.
Fantastic.
I know that's the shitty answer.
Backstory, cool.
Matt, were you about?
Oh, I thought you were going to continue. I was waiting.
No. It looked like you had
I
thoughts,
think honestly, it does depend, because it's like, all right, how many players do you have in the game? How much backstory did they give you? What can you take out and use and implement in your world for locations, quests, NPCs, all that stuff? Because you might have a player, like in my game, a lot of my players had like backgrounds specifically tied to certain like locations and cities and places. So like, I would be like, all right, so a majority of their bit is going to be when they go there. And then they go there and then they have their quests and adventures tied around that player. But I guess, would I have it tied to, like, I don't know if the campaign has an overarching story, like you can, and like you can tie like the players into it so they are personally more invested. But it depends. I feel like a cop-out saying that, but like it does kind of depend on the campaign you're running. Because if it's like you're playing Tyranny of Dragons and you roll up with Yorl the Turtle, fucking turtle barbarian, and he has absolutely nothing to do with dragons, it's like I don't know how to help you, buddy. I mean, like, a turtle's like a dragon, right? They're reptiles. It's fine. We'll figure it out.
Turtles, dragons, those are basically the same thing, I think.
So it's like one of those things where, it like, honestly, it does, like Josh said, it does kind of depend on the campaign, but I think it can influence the game.
So to give an actual answer, and I'm essentially extrapolating on it depends here, but to give a something of substance, I think the thing that it should depend on is workload. If you have a player who comes to you and says, my backstory is I'm a turtle barbarian from Chult who used to raise velociraptors, and I've come here to the Sword Coast to fuck up Tiamat because she stole my favorite muffins. Then, sorry, chum, your backstory is not going to have a lot of influence on the campaign because you didn't put a lot of work in to make it matter. But if you have a player who comes to you and says, okay, so I'm thinking about playing a Dragonborn, and I was potentially considering being a paladin. Does it make sense if I am a Dragonborn paladin of Bahamut and that I was given a direct quest to go against Tiamat, and I heard about the cult because of my teacher, who is, my master who taught me how to be a paladin? He has a direct connection with Bahamut, heard about this cult situation, sent me on, and then you say, okay, well, you couldn't have heard about the cult because the cult is secret. However, perhaps you got sent to the city here for this reason, right? Your GM comes back with like that in response. And then you as a player say, okay, what if I also add this part of it? So if the player goes out of their way to have the back and forth with you as a GM, to work their character in and actively cooperates with you, that player's backstory gets to have a lot of influence on the campaign because you put the work in. You took the time to make your backstory have influence. You worked with me to get it in there because obviously you wanted your backstory to matter, so we cooperated on it. But if you just wrote some shit down and then never tell me about it and then expect me to like or tell me barely anything about it, and you don't go out like you don't put any effort in to work it into the situation, then like sorry, but you can't expect me to like shoehorn your backstory in. You know what I mean? Like I'm not gonna. If you don't care, I don't care. Is I guess basically what I'm saying. Mm-hmm. You know, like to give a very direct example, Isaiah. With your character, Django, you know, you were like, okay, I want to play this crazy, like, high-tech, Magitech, Warforged, like, soldier dude. And I'm like, all right, cool. Here's how Warforged function. And you were like, okay, can I be this, like, sort of high-tech prototype situation? And I go, okay, yeah, sure. Here's how that would work. X, Y, and Z situation. And then you said, how much information do I remember? And I say very little, but you'll be able to make checks along the way to fill that information in later. And then I will potentially give you, you know, major story beats that'll give you big chunks or whatever. And we had that back and forth. And because we had that back and forth, Django's backstory has a pretty hefty influence on a chunk of the campaign, right? A specific facet of the campaign, which is the war that happened a long time ago. Django has a relation to that. Django has an influence on that. I will make decisions around the fact that Django is present. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Because you took that time to do that cooperation with me. And then Ant didn't do as much of that, so Kai's backstory doesn't have as much influence. Now, there's still some stuff that Ant gave me, so there's still something there, but I think, you know, it's directly proportional to how much work you're doing with me. That's basically how I look at it.
Yeah. Okay.
You know,
what about you, Isaiah? Sorry.
I'm pretty much of the same mind, to be honest, right? Like, if a player, because I've said this before, several players in my game have literally said, my character has a backstory, but it's never going to come up, so I'm just not going to tell you what it is. And, you know, I'm that befuddled the shit out of me. Like, I'm not even going to play.
Yeah, and that's a little much, I will admit.
It's a little crazy. And, you know, I've tried to be encouraging and be like, hey, man, like, you know, even if you don't want it to come up, I can, like, at least throw me your backstory so I could give you, like, some backstory-specific loot. Or maybe some NPCs can come to like look for characters, and one character is like, nah, it's whatever, I don't really give a shit. I'm like, okay, all right.
Yeah, I mean, at least let me like mention your fucking mother's name in passing or something, like.
Yeah, but like, hey, that's what she wants. That's what she wants. She, you know, I told her like, you know, you're gonna be missing out on some stuff, and she was like, that's fine. All right, cool. And then, Ant, I hate to call you out. I usually call you by your screen name. I didn't. Fuck. But yeah, like, LP is usually like, I'll give you my backstory, and then it's like, hey, bud, you got that backstory? Like, still writing it. I'm like, all right, cool. I'm gonna get an encyclopedia. I bet money. But yeah, it just, I haven't gotten them yet, and you know, there is this sort of mutual understanding that their backstories are not going to be as relevant than people who gave me thoughts, or people who gave me, you know, something like actual written backstory that we like came up together. Like, I know two players, the one who had the amnesia and the one who plays the like Firebird Native American tribe. We literally worked together like in a private chat for like 2 or 3 hours, hashing out some fine details and like putting them in Google Docs.
Put the work in.
Yeah. and that was great. It was fun, and it's really cool to have those things come up, and for them to be plot relevant, and for the characters and players to have like a true drive to want to interact with the story and change the story based on their actions. That's my favorite shit.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really good way to sort of like measure and or gauge what you're, you know, it's an indicator for what your player wants too, right? Because if the player says, I'm not going to give you a lot of information, don't worry about it, then you know, okay, this player does not care about that facet of the game, right? So I don't need to stress over it. So it's good because on both ends of the spectrum, the player who works with you and gives you a lot of information, the player who doesn't work with you and gives you very little, you're being told how those two people want the game to be played for them. You know, you're getting information on both of them, and you know, okay, for player A, I don't need to worry about like tying them into the scenario, and for player B, I should think about tying them into the scenario. So it lets you allocate your workload, and that, you know, that's good because that makes prepping easier. You know, when you know prepping is it's not that you're prepping less, but you know where to allocate that prep work time. So it's helpful. And the idea of my character has a backstory, but don't fucking worry about it, that's a little odd, but I guess if they really, really, truly don't care, then c'est la vie.
Yeah.
Baguette?
I don't know.
C'est la vie. Baguette Americans.
And canceled by the French.
I am French. They can't cancel me. You want some croissants?
I'm fucking crying.
What are these showers? No la douche in this country.
Oh my god, Matt, what are your thoughts on the two questions?
I mean, I think I kind of piggybacked a little bit off Josh's. You know, it depends with the whole influence thing. But like, how much work should a GM do? I definitely like definitely working with your GM on the backstory and on something implementing into the game. Because there are certain things, like as DMs, like we don't want to like give the plot away or like fucking, hey, so this is like the bad guy and this is his plan. But like, hey, this is probably like some of the enemies you guys might be facing. These are some of the places you guys might be going in the campaign world. So it's just like, here's, you know, like what kind of story can we work on together? And that's definitely like something like a session 0, maybe one-on-one like you guys were doing with the players, you know, working out some kind of like idea for backstories and things that your characters would want to do in the world.
Okay.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny. My response was answering the question of how much influence should the character's backstory have, but thinking about it, I also answered how much work should the GM do at the exact same time. So
you did, yeah, because we talked about like the whole Turtle and Chult thing and being like, you know, if your story has nothing to do with my game, that's not a whole lot I can do for you.
Yeah, I didn't mean to answer both questions at the same time. I guess I'm just that fucking big brain.
Yeah, I mean, I was gonna sort of